And Daryl, former CLC principal down in the Huntington area, has been pretty much involved with CLCs right almost from the start, I would say, Daryl?
Yeah.
So he doesn't need a whole lot of introductions, but I think to give him, maybe to help him situate himself, maybe just a quick introduction. We'll go through the list. We'll do a quick introduction, what school or community you're from, and maybe what's your reality in your community, and what related to NANS, and if you have any particular things that you want to look at or hear about. So why don't we start? I'll go through the list. Let me start with Nicole. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning. Hi, Daryl.
Good morning. Nice to see you again.
So I'm sorry, I missed the question. I was doing two things at the same time.
Just your name, your school, and a bit about the reality in your community of why you want to learn more about supporting NANS schools.
So I'm from Riverside School Board. I have two schools that I work with, one in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu and the other one is in Chambly, William Ladder in Chambly and St. John's in Saint-Jean. The reality of Saint-Jean is, I guess, the clientele. For us, it's trying to get resources to the English-speaking and finding the English-speaking communities in Saint-Jean. There are pockets of English-speaking. It's just kind of reaching them, and how do we share information with them? How do we get them to partake in the English services that we are trying to get in our area in Saint-Jean. ARC has now, we have somebody who's, they've given money to have somebody be there and support the English-speaking community. So that's going to be a slow process, but somebody is there to start reaching out to the English-speaking communities, and we've already established a survey which will be sent out to those families. So that's where we are in that area. Chambly is a little bit different. Sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Chambly is a little bit different, where it's closer to the 30, which is closer to Longueuil area. So they have a lot of resources. They know where to go, where they can get resources. So it's more Saint-Jean that I'm really focused on in this, for this particular webinar.
Great. Just maybe in case Daryl doesn't know, ARC is an NPI working on the South Shore of Montreal.
Yeah, I've worked with them before. Yeah.
Okay, Brooke, I'm pretty sure that Daryl knows a little bit of your reality out there in the valley.
Yeah. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from the Huntington area, the New Frontier School Board. I have 3 schools, 2 elementary schools, Howick and Huntington, and adult ed sector Hack, and they're all within the Océan-Laurent. So I think this really pertains to me. I mean, I'm I'm at a school Daryl was at before, so he knows quite well, but for everyone else, the elementary schools are between the levels of 8 and 10 NANS, so there's high levels of, you know, economic, social, défavorisé. And then the adult sector, even though it's not coded per se, I guess, majority of our students come from the region and surrounding areas and are Anglophone, and there's a lot of needs within the school. And the Océan-Laurent in general, I think, is about 30 or 35% Anglophone. So we have quite a bit of resources available around us in our community and partners, but it's just, you know, to properly mobilize them, to have the services accessible to the families and to those specific families as well. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Brooke. Annie, welcome. Good morning.
Hello. So I'm with Riverside. My CLC has 5 schools: Access, which is the adult center; Reach, which is a school for kids with special needs; St. Lambert Elementary, St. Lambert International, and St. Mary's. So St. Mary's used to be a NANS school. They had so many things going on, I think, in the past, for the past 10 years, I think. I'm not sure if it's still, I don't think it's still a NANS school, but the needs are still there. and those kids go to St. Lambert International High School. So St. Lambert International High School, I don't think quotes for NANS, but because of the kids that are coming from St. Lambert. So I think my reality is that I have schools that should be rated NANS, but are not. And what we see is the hardest at St. Mary's is to get parent involvement. And I think that's always what we strive to do, is to get parents involved. And so I guess I'm trying to see how I can get St. Mary's more on the going, because a lot of stuff happens at school. I don't know how much of it continues at home afterwards. So
Thanks, Annie.
that's me.
Good morning, LP. LP is one of our school board reps, Daryl. She's with the EMSB, so her focus might be a little different, a reasoning for being with us today. Good morning, LP.
Good morning. Yes, that's correct. So I'm with the English Montreal School Board. My capacity is a little bit different. So I've been, I'm a consultant with educational services. I've worked with our elementary schools. Sorry, going backwards a little bit. Most of our schools, we have 70 elementary and high schools. Out of those, most probably 63 are inner city and the other ones are not inner city. So there's a lot of disadvantage that's sometimes more concentrated, more diffuse in different schools, but the concept of underprivilege is always very present in basically our entire school board. So I've worked for a number of years, for the last 15 years, with the elementary inner city schools, among other of my dossiers, and I've recently picked up also the NANS dossier, as Daryl knows quite well. So I wanted to see, I wanted to hear, basically by joining the meeting today, I wanted to hear other realities and other ideas that may come up, and that then I could take back to our high schools, which are our NANS schools. So that's my my little story.
LP supports the CLC, so LP's a school board rep with the CLC dossier. One of the many dossiers that LP maintains. Great, thanks, LP. Sue Min, you're next on my list. I think you might have joined late, so we're looking for name, your school, and a little bit of your community reality of regarding NANS.
I'm Suman. I support 2 schools in the Eastern Townships in the Richmond region, Richmond Regional High School and St. Francis Elementary School. They're down the street from each other. And they're both NANS schools. I know that Daryl has spoken to my principal, Kirk Robinson, and my principal has said, talk to Daryl. He's got some great ideas. We should talk about it. I'm also interested because with both schools, the NANS strategies and the NANS funding have been in place for quite a few years now, and it's always been very in-school classroom focused. So I'm curious to hear how different strategies that may involve CLC partnerships can come into play with that.
Excellent, thank you. Jessica, all the way from the Lower North Shore. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning. I'm Jessica. I work at the St. Paul's School CLC, and I'm on the Lower North Shore. I'm not sure if our school is considered a NANS school. I haven't heard about that before, actually, but because we're so isolated in such a small community, it is difficult to find any experts to come in or resources to come in to help in special circumstances with kids that need a little bit more help. So just wondering what other options we have as an isolation standpoint.
Excellent. Thanks, Jessica. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. I'm taking advantage of the day, as you can see.
Lucky you.
I'm from Tetford Mines, A.S. Johnson High School, and St. Patrick's Elementary. And basically why I'm joining this meeting is to see other schools' realities. Not sure if my school's a NANS school, but I'm here to see what I can learn, sorry, I have to refuse a call that's trying to come in. I can't see you anymore, okay? And so I'm here to see the reality of the other schools, like I was saying, and also to see what I can bring to our community. Our community or our school, we have lots of students that come from areas which are about an hour away from Thetford. So lots of people which are away from Thetford Mines, which makes it sometimes difficult to get the parent engagement. I do have parents that do engage, are pretty close to our school, but it's difficult to do activities after school to get them in or to come and visit. So that's it. I'm basically here to see other schools' reality and to get tips from other people or from you. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, Julie. Welcome.
Hi everyone. So I'm Julie. I'm CDA in Magog Princess Elizabeth Elementary School. We are a NANS school. I'm interested in participating in this workshop just to see, well, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but everyone else's reality and how I can better, differently leverage the community resources to support our schools and our parents. Well, schools, one school, our school and our parents. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm curious to learn more.
Thank you. Excellent. And last but not least, Clea, down in Stansted. Good morning, Clea.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Nope. A little louder.
Can you hear me okay?
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Well, my name is Clea Corman. I have some issues with my computer today, so you can't see my face, but I'm from Stansted, out just on the border between the states and in the eastern townships. Stansted has a really particular set of realities. We have high unemployment rate, low education of parents. There's about a 30% unemployment rate, and I can't remember if it's about 30 or 40% of parents haven't finished their high school, and the dropout rate is 50% only finish high school, so of the teenagers. So our school either was a 10 and is now a 9, or was a 9 and is now an 8. So we deal with quite vulnerable family situations, and so kind of like the rest of you, I just wanted to see. I've been working in the community for about 6 years now, so I'm quite familiar about the approaches on how to engage the unengageable, but I'm always open for new tricks.
Great, thank you. We also have Danielle and Catherine with us today. I don't know if either of you have anything you'd like to add at this point.
Well, I used to work in a NANS school as a CDA at Parkdale Elementary. So I'm always interested to hear more tips and tricks and how we can bridge that, not the gap, but what else we can offer at Learn that can help support the schools, particularly when it comes to NANS dossier. So I'm very happy to have Daryl here speaking about this. And I'm happy that LP is here too.
Danielle, last word?
I'm happy to.
Good. Okay.
Good morning. That's all
Danielle's been busy working on our
yes
list for her. So
lots of deadlines.
Okay, Daryl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Debbie, and thanks for having me. And I'm thrilled to have everyone here with us this morning. I've been really excited about meeting with all of you because you are all some of my favorite people. I find that you make the greatest difference in the lives of all of our communities and our schools, and especially for our students in disadvantaged areas. I've been a massive fan of the CLC concept since even before its inception. I grew up in Howick, which is part of the Tragedies Valley in the Haut-Saint-Laurent. And while in Howick, as a youngster, our custodian had the school open probably 4 nights a week for Cubs. We skated on the hockey rink in the evening. We went there on our skidoos. So the whole idea of CLCs back in the 70s and 80s was already alive in the Chateauguay Valley. Fast forwarding to when I was an administrator at CVR and in Huntington, all of the mills closed in Huntington, and so many people were without a job, and we had to repurpose all of the people in the community who lost their jobs, and that was a devastating time for the students but for their families and parents. So we created a group called Action au Saint-Laurent and many other committees to try to rejuvenate the community. When I was at Heritage Elementary, which was the Huntington Academy, that's when the Huntington Adult Center started, and they were given the virtual, or they were given a CLC. And at Heritage Elementary, I really wanted a CLC in the worst way. And I was working with Brooke's mother at the time, and Kim Wilson and I really wanted to have the CLC, and we didn't get it. And we had that school open 4 nights a week minimum. We created activity Saturdays for the community. And we said, well, since we didn't get it, we're just gonna outdo them anyway. And we were really hard-headed about it. So, and then a few years later, I moved to the Huntington Adult Center and worked there. We started a CEGEP program with Champlain College. And out of that, we couldn't get enough students. So I said, I know how to get enough students. So I just called Kim Wilson, and Kim came over, we talked. She went through her daughter's yearbooks and got enough students for the program just by going door to door and calling people. So even before the CLC concept was an institution within the province, we had people that really believed in it, and we were working hard at that. So I started my new position with the ministry for the NANS Intervention Milieu Défavorisé dossier in October. It's been a massive learning curve, especially using technology like we're using today. And one of my first jobs was to read the reference guide, which is in French, it's La Référentielle, which you will get a copy of in French if you don't already have it, and the English guide should be out shortly. So while you were introducing yourselves, I took some notes, so that's why I was leaning sideways for a little while and writing things down to address some of your concerns. But I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the elements of the 5 leviers, or the 5 mechanisms, as they call them, that will support the IMD schools. And even if you're not a NANS or IMD school, these are strategies that will work with all of your students. So if you'll see here, Debbie sent this out to you, I believe yesterday or this morning. So really it's what your role could be to improve student success, or to provide more resources, or to support students from disadvantaged areas or disadvantaged homes. So the first thing is really recognizing students' prior knowledge and community connection. And the way this is important is, my favorite example is my good friend Greg Edwards, who was a teacher at CVR, or Chateauguay Valley Regional High School in Ormstown, back when I was a student. He was, I think, Brooke's teacher as well, but he taught grade 11 English. And he had a 99.9% pass rate, even though all of these exams were corrected from outside people. The beauty of Greg's approach to teaching was that he wanted to recognize all of the students' prior knowledge. He wanted to connect to the community, and every novel, everything that they worked on related to the community, so that the students could internalize exactly what was going on. And when it came time to write the exam, they were really only writing about themselves. They didn't really have to work that hard at it, because everything that he talked about related to something that was going on somewhere in the Chateauguay Valley based on their realities. So, your role in this might be to connect with some of the teachers. It doesn't have to be the grade 11 English teacher, but it could be any of the teachers. But anytime that the students can internalize and make the learning a little bit more authentic within the classroom, based on their community, the reality, and their experiences in life, you're guaranteed to increase the success rate. You're going to have a far better student engagement and more active learning in the classroom. So I would encourage everyone to connect with your teachers as much as possible to see what we can bring from the outside into the classroom. The second levier is to provide leadership in the area of social justice. A few years ago, I worked with Don Rosenbaum, and Don Rosenbaum's been hovering around the CLC world for a long time. He's a retired teacher from CVR. He taught at WIC in the West Island. But after he retired as an English teacher from CVR in Ormstown, he did a master's in as a family life educator. And when I was at Heritage Elementary School, we hired Don to work with some of the families, and we just, for lack of a better name, we called it 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. And what we did was we brought in some of the families the parents who really needed support in supporting their children. We also brought in some families or some parents who were the more affluent or cooler parents, and they would meet once a week. We provide coffee or juice or muffins and snacks, and they would talk about some of the strategies to support the students with homework, healthy eating habits, some structure within their lives at home to make it better. And I would usually ask one of my parents that I put in there to be exasperated and say, I'm trying to get my homework done with my son, but he won't listen and he won't do it. Like, how can we get this done, and how can you help? And then a lot of the other parents felt compelled to open up. So this is one of the strategies that we used within the the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. The next element within that social justice is really attachment. I think within the whole IMD NANS dossier, attachment is probably one of the most important things within a school. It improves attendance, safety, grades, and so much more. I'll talk about that a little bit in a couple of minutes, but and then within that, there's character education. So I had the privilege of working with Lindsay Strawn. She was a principal within New Frontiers School Board for many years. And I also hired her when I was a principal at Heritage Elementary School. Lindsay was the greatest advocate for character education. So she ran the Second Step program. She did bucket filling, 6 pillars of character, rock walls. So anything that we could do to create a better climate for students to develop empathy and to develop their character. So within your role as CDAs, anytime that you can improve character education, improve school climate. As a principal, I was never a big fan of creating 17 pages of rules for the entire school. I was really more into just creating a way of being within, really just creating a way of being within the school. And really it comes down to, respect, showing up on time is respectful, being polite is respectful. So it just comes down to like having a couple of very, very simple rules based on respect and creating a way of being. And, when I was at the Huntington Adult Center, we had basically all of the students who were, didn't make it from high school. And we had about 160 students within the building at the time. And over the little over 8 years that I was there, we only had 2 fights in 8 years. And, you know, I attribute this to the staff members there who espouse the values of creating a way of being within the school. You know, we had some character education for most of our classes, and using the power of the teachable moment to really, you know, when addressing things as they come up and making it authentic. And because, you know, I've believed for a long time that, you know, we're not born into this world knowing how to handle every difficult situation. So when we get students, whether they're 3 years old or 7 years old or 13 or 23 years old, or even our age, we, you know, we don't know how to handle every situation. And that's the power of the teachable moment, and working with our students to help them through whatever they're dealing with. And the last element of the section 2 is really the notion of outrageous love. So I saw this video with Holly Shiitake, and he talks about outrageous love. And our students from NANS families or NANS schools or disadvantaged families, they are the students who need the most outrageous love. I'll give you 2 examples. There's a lady that I've worked with for almost 20 years, Muffy O'Connor. I worked with her in Huntington at St. Joseph's School when I was a teacher there. I've worked with her as a principal. I taught her sons and was a principal for her sons. But, you know, she was an attendant in our school and a lunchtime supervisor. And when some of the students came off the bus, the dirtier their clothes, the poorer the family that they came from, the tougher their situation, the harder she hugged them, the harder she loved them, and the better she made them feel. She made those kids feel like the sun would not come up in her world unless she saw them. You know, she made them feel that the student was doing more for her than she could ever do for them. And those students loved to come to school and made a difference. The other person I like to talk about is our phys ed teacher at Heritage was Harry Antoine. Harry's gift as a phys ed teacher and coach was that he tried to make every single student feel special. And it didn't matter if you were the best athlete or the child who had you know, a condition where they couldn't participate in gym class for a few days or a few weeks. He gave everybody a role and he made everybody feel special. Some of that was, you know, taking my son and throwing me in the garbage can, and that made my son feel special. But other kids, it's giving them tasks to do to organize the equipment room while the other kids are playing, or doing whatever it takes to make them feel special. And it's funny because, you know, when I talk to the kids, you know, a lot of them feel, and I'm sure if I did a survey within that school, I bet you about 90% of the kids would, if we asked them, said, you know, do you think there's a teacher who, you know, you're their favorite student? And I bet you 90% of the kids would say, oh, I know Mr. Harry's, I know I'm Mr. Harry's favorite student, you know, because that's how he makes one of them feel. So that's the notion of outrageous love, but it's also to, you know, to make these kids want to feel special and to come to school. The next section is involving the educational community, which is really, you know, what you are experts at. And I'm also here to learn from you as soon as I'm done talking, and it won't be much longer. So one of the best examples that I've seen, and I've seen it a few times over the years, when I was a student in Howick Elementary School, again, we had these activity Fridays. So what happened was that you know, you could sign up and you can learn guitar on a Friday afternoon, and the parents and community members would come in. If you were in grade 5 or 6, you were old enough to go to the canoeing and camping trip. So you know, canoe up and down the English River in Howick. You know, you could take macrame, you could take pottery, you could take so many other activities, and every student was able to do that based on, you know, the staff members and the community members who would come in and work with all of the students. fast forward to when I was at CVR and Patty Peter was the principal there, and now at Ormstown Elementary School, you know, what they're doing is they're developing professional learning communities during the time that the students are doing the activities. So as a CDA, it would be great to collaborate with your principal and other staff members so that the staff members, the teaching staff, could be liberated to work on tracking student success, working on planning learning and evaluation situations, while all of the students are working with community members on activities. So it could be dance, guitar, piano, recorder, things that these students would not normally get in school, and things that they probably can't afford to take within the community. So this is an amazing model that Joanne Enrico, the principal at OES, has implemented, and she's really brought it to the next level in terms of getting the most out of supporting the students, but also making it a lot of fun for them. When I was at your CLC conference, I saw the Table des Chefs, and I know there's a lot of schools within this network that are working with the Table des Chefs, which I think is a magnificent program because it attacks so many concerns like health concerns. We have, in some communities, we have community clothing swaps of clothing, sports equipment, books, and so on. There's intergenerational activities, partnerships with government resources like the CLSC, your NPIs with the CHSSN, which I think is just like one of the greatest organizations. And now you have ELAN that's really kicking it up in the province as well. So all of those community organizations or government organizations are just phenomenal to work with. The last one within that section is really outdoor and nature education. And when I got this position, what I did was I really wanted to visit a lot of some schools that were doing exceptional things and to support the IMD NANS dossier. I wasn't able to visit every school, obviously, at the time, but I did visit a few schools, and I was able to visit Pierre Elliott Trudeau Elementary School in Gatineau, where David McFall is the principal. And I've known David a long time, and I've worked with his Dermot, who used to be a CDA and is within the school now as well. But they really work hard on outdoor and nature education, and the students in that school are spending a lot of time in the forest, in the parks close to their school. And it's unbelievable the changes that are happening with those students. They have people who come in who are bird experts. You have people that come in that are tree experts, and they're really working hard to instill the value of nature and the outdoors with the students. The fourth levier is continuously developing and using expertise. So at some point in the fall, I'm going to be touring around the province to work with all of the school boards and all of the schools. And at that point, you know, I'll be looking a little bit more at brain theory related to poverty. I've been fortunate over the years with the CLC to attend a lot of poverty symposiums, mostly with the Tamarack group. So I've gone with Debbie and some of the CDAs to, there was a conference in Halifax and one in Ottawa. And before we were a CLC, I actually attended a poverty symposium in Toronto. And I learned a lot from these, but there's a lot of brain theory to understand students coming from poverty. I've been reading a lot of Eric Jensen's books as well, so that I'm able to better support your educators within the building on how to support their students. But I think one of the greatest things about the CLCs, and when I got hired by the ministry, they asked, you know, how would you work with school boards and schools and whatnot? And I said, you know, I would like to follow the CLC model of visiting schools and sharing some of our models, sharing some of our best practices, so that they can be modified or replicated within your own school. So I would encourage doing that anytime that you possibly can. The very last levier is intervene early and throughout the student's schooling. So really it comes down to data-driven decision-making, tracking of achievement. And although some of these strategies cross over the 5 different leviers or in a couple different leviers, it's really, the more data we have, the better you can advocate for your students, and the better you can advocate for your school and for yourselves. I think it's so important when we look at CLC schools. I love to see the impact that CLCs have with improving student retention. I like looking at increased enrollment, student success. All of these elements can be attributed to the CLCs and what you do. And the more data that you keep on this, the stronger my argument is to be able to support you. What's fun is, you know, I work with the Anglophone services at the ministry, but also with the Direction de Soutien, and I talk about CLCs all the time, and they are blown away with what you do and with how much I appreciate what you do. Part of this is also working with early literacy strategies, and one of the you know, there's a lot of different strategies in terms of catching students up when they're young, and different resource models, including acceleration that's at Pierre Elliott Trudeau Elementary School in the English Montreal School Board. But one of my favorites was from Waterloo Elementary, and this was a long time ago with Renée Gore. And I sent our librarians from Heritage School to Waterloo to look into the book bag and theme carts. So what we did was we took a theme. So let's say it's trains. So we would take about 4 books on trains that were at the child's level and put them in the book bag. And then we'd take a couple of harder books that the parents could read to their children and throw those in the book bag. And then we had a book bag that was themed trains. And then our librarians and volunteers made book bags for all kinds of different subjects, all kinds of different levels of readers and all kinds of interests. And these book bags would go out on a weekly basis and then come back the following week or in a couple of weeks. And it saved us from discarding books or selling the books, you know, for 10 cents every year. And it helped with the literacy within the school. And finally, really working on the transition strategies. When I was an administrator in the schools, I worked really hard with the les CPE, so the daycares within the community, to look at transitioning our students that were 3-4 years old to start pre-K or kindergarten. It's not always your role to do that, but sometimes you're in there and you're attending the regional meetings for les petites enfants, or whatever the committee is. So it's to perhaps support the school with the transition strategies into elementary school, and also to help transition our students from elementary school to high school, and from high school to adult ed, CEGEP or vocational training, and to work with perhaps the goal coordinators within your school boards. as I go through some of the things that I wrote down about your concerns, I can't answer all of them today, obviously, but the first one is just with regards to Jessica from the Lower North Shore in St. Paul's. I visited St. Paul's. It's a beautiful town. I stayed at George and Ina's house when I was there. And yeah, so in a sense, the communities in the Lower North Shore do not get NANS funding because you get funded in a different way, but you are supported by myself and the NANS and IMD dossier. So you don't get direct funding like some of the other schools, but you do get support. So over the Christmas holidays, I actually met up with Phil Joycey and talked to him about all of that. And so you do get some support. Do any of you have any, I've been talking for a while, so do any of you have any comments or questions? I really like to open this up a little bit.
Any comments, anyone? Questions? I guess the one thing I would say, the last comment you made about the early literacy strategies, Daryl, a lot of our CLCs are certainly focused on that. I bet you Sumin could probably, she's got some great stuff happening down in terms of early childhood. And maybe you want to speak about a bit about your strategy down there?
I'm not even too sure where to begin. I was actually thinking of asking more about, you had mentioned, Daryl, data-driven decision-making. Can you give just kind of a couple of examples of what particular data that these would be looking at? You would be looking at in these?
Yeah, so.
Sorry, I pivoted to your question, Debbie.
That's okay, that's okay.
Yeah. So what a lot of schools are doing is they're tracking literacy, math, French, success, but also social skills, and it's in a bit of a spreadsheet, and so every student can be color coded, green, yellow, red, based on their ability. So they might have green and be doing really well in English, French, and math, but they might be struggling in their social skills. But I don't know if that's necessarily the CLC's job. I think that's really like the principal and the educator's job. But it's trying to keep track of the number of families that come into your building, the number of volunteers you have. I'm sure you do a lot of this already. But I mean, the more data we have to support CLCs, the better it is, because I'm fighting all of the, or not fighting, but advocating all of the time for you and bragging about all of you as much as I can, every opportunity I get. So it's really just keeping some sort of data on that. Does that make sense, Sumin?
Yeah, it actually goes into what I think Debbie was prompting me to talk about, which is in our early childhood strategies right now, with the most recent Learn CHSSN grant. It gave me the opportunity to sit down with our kindergarten teachers to look at what we're doing in terms of interventions in the school and creating circle charts. So evaluate circle charts to see what in social skills. And we are looking at using that not just for when the children arrive, measuring them, I think, in January of their first year. So it would look at the transition, but also bring that back now to our partners who are working on different early childhood strategies to say, well, if we're offering this as a community in transition or any other play-based activities from 3 to 5, are there particular things that we can do that would target these areas, and so that we're working together on a set of measures that we're tracking? Is that what you were thinking of, Debbie?
Yeah, just to highlight some of the stuff that you're doing, because I know it's a really big part of what you're doing down in the Richmond area. So just to let people know. Brooke, you had a comment, and then LP.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on when Daryl, I think it was number 3, you said, you know, involving the educational community, and you had highlighted OES. I think I thought that was a really interesting point, and with our CDA hats on, something, you know, that can easily be done. There are other schools in the NFSB that have implemented it. I know at Galt, I started up and implemented it there, and I'm now doing the same thing at Howick Elementary as well. So any fellow CDAs who are interested in that concept of bringing community partners in and service providers and having them, you know, come in monthly and do these workshops with the students, all the while where the teachers can professionally develop, I'd be more than willing to Zoom with you. It can look really different depending on the realities, even within the NFSB. I mean, Galt had a budget of $0, and, you know, we were pushing almost 200 students, and still each month we were able to have, you know, 8 or 9 service providers and partners come in for an hour and a half. All of our teachers were released, and it worked really well. And, you know, you can find other funding opportunity as well, the Artists Inspire, you know, these different micro grants that pop up. If you put them all together at the beginning of the year, instead of doing dispersed projects, if you use them all together to support these community connections or whatever you want to name them within your school, that money can go a really long way in supporting an initiative like this. And that's kind of how Howick did it. So I just wanted to say, like, I think it's a really good point, and it's like a win-win-win-win for all sides that are involved in it. So yeah.
Can I ask a question then, maybe about the OES, maybe clarify? Where did that, was that a CDA suggestion, or was it the CDA and principal working together to come up with this idea, Daryl?
So when I was at CVR and Patty Peter was the principal, Joanne was a teacher at CVR. So I know, and Joanne coordinated a few things within the school. So Joanne's been part of that. So I'm sure she came up with that, but I'm sure that the CDA works with Joanne to connect with people and do some of the coordination, because it's an awful pile of work to get set up. But, and I know that Chad Campbell, the phys ed teacher there, also coordinates some of that. So it's a real partnership to get that going. But I find that's one of the greatest strategies. And I've brought people, my colleagues from the ministry, to visit OES. And we were actually supposed to have a meeting there last Friday, but clearly couldn't. But if any of you have anything really special that you want us to see, I'd gladly bring some of my team, and we'd have a meeting, you know, give us a nice tour and show off some of the great things that are going on. And we'd have a meeting within your school that day, because we typically like to meet different places.
Thank you. LP, and then Annie. LP?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to go back to point number 5, to mechanism number 5, and to the data-driven decision. Just to say that traditionally, with the MESA and now the educational projects at the school, the CDAs were always encouraged to be part of the team that was working on these documents and to be in the know of what exactly the rest of the academic side of the school was looking for. And recently, when for the CLCs, the annual plan had to be compiled every year, the CDAs were highly involved with the educational, well, they worked with the educational plan to create the annual plan for the CLCs. So basically, we're not reinventing the wheel. And I love this document because it sort of zooms you in into what the rest of the school is looking at and what kind of data they're looking for. So therefore, you're not looking for separate data, you're just continuing the same collection, feeding off the same area of the data that we want to collect. So that's for me, the annual plan that we have at the CLCs is an amazing tool.
Excellent. Thanks, LP. Oh, yeah, Daryl?
One of the when Debbie and I spoke about this in the fall, we talked about the date that I wanted to do the little webinar. And first of all, I needed to get my feet wet within the dossier a little bit, but I really wanted this time of year, because this is the time when a lot of the schools are really working on their educational project as an entire staff. And maybe some of you have been working from home with your staff through Zoom or Teams or whatnot. But, you know, you are the advocates for this NANS IMD dossier a lot of the time. And I just wanted the CDAs to be mindful and to be the voice for our students from disadvantaged homes and disadvantaged areas, so that it can be embedded within the educational project, so that it's a way of being and not an add-on all the time. So that's...
Well, it's actually one of the focuses that we've been encouraging our CDAs when they're developing their action plans. Make sure it's aligned with the school educational project, so that, you know, you're having that conversation. As Alpi said, they're much more involved as they're developing their action plans now and working with the principal and with the staff. I think a little more so than they have in the past with the theory of change, when we were doing the theory of change. So, Annie?
Yes. One of the goals that I've been working on for many years is transition. Having worked at St. Lambert International since, I think it's 2005, we started a camp, transitional camp, for the grade 6 students coming into secondary 1. So we would host, we have hosted, hopefully we will host this year, I don't know. In August, we invite all of our future Sec 1s to come in for a week. And they do different, you know, trying to, you know, figuring out how to open up their lockers, how does the schedule work, getting to know students. People are coming from different elementary schools, out of zone kids, and it's been quite a success. And every year we get parents who are saying, please, we need to keep this going. My child was so nervous coming in, or even thinking about high school. So now my worry is what's going to happen this year, because when I brought up the CIT, because it's called CIT camp, when I brought it up to the staff, principal was like, we can't even think of that right now. So my fear is that we are going to have all of these kids coming in who have not finished their grade 6 in their elementary school, have not had their graduation, and now they're going to start high school completely. I don't know. It's a fear for me to see how we can sort of help these kids coming in with what we're living through right now. That being said, I have to say that I also work at Access, which is the adult education. And for the first time, I guess they've had to do their own sort of success plan. So they wanted me to be part of those meetings, and it's been great. I find that they are really reaching on how they can get their students to feel like they're part of Access as it's their community. And the more that we're reaching out to them, the more they are realizing how these people who are going back to school, clearly a majority of them are kids who might have come from NANS school or from, you know, poverty and difficulty. Like if they weren't able to finish their high school in the normal setting, they're ending up in our adult education centers. And it's creating, the teachers are not used to seeing students with so many needs. And so now that we're trying to figure out how can we sort of like reach out to community. I mean, it was the first school who reached out to me during this to say, we need to feed our students. Now, these are obviously 17, 18, 20-year-olds and above. And our reality at our RSB is we're getting a lot of the immigrant population, because having not succeeded in French, here they are saying, well, now I can come in and do it in English. So I don't know, what is the status on adult education and NANS? Is there any money, or does that not exist? Has it even been a thought? So here's my 2 cents.
I just love that you brought this up. So when I met my have two bosses in Quebec City. So when I was there one time, I never really spoke to them ever. They didn't know my background really. I mean, I think they gave a cursory look at my CV, but I initiated a conversation with them. I said, I'd like to meet with you to half an hour just so that you know where I'm coming from and my background and what I'm interested in and whatnot. So we had a conversation, and I talked about adult ed and because having worked over 8 years in adult and vocational training, and I said, when I was at the Huntington Adult Center, especially, a lot of our students in adult ed, it's like we were running an alternative school, right? A lot of the students were near homeless. They were couch surfing. They were sleeping at a friend's place, and then they'd have a falling out with their friend or their friend's family, and then go somewhere else, and then they'd break up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They'd have to go somewhere else. So I mean, as a staff and as a center, we found fridges and stoves and food, and there's nothing we didn't do to support them. So when I talk to the people in Quebec City who I report to, they had a really sympathetic ear for that. And I can't promise this, but she came into one of our meetings the last time I was there and at the end of January, and she said, we're really looking at trying to figure something out for adult ed with the IMD or NANS dossier. So they're looking at it. It's on their radar. So that's all I can really say. I don't know anymore. We haven't talked about it again since. And your point about doing the kind of like in Ormstown, we call it the Jumpstart Program. So, the grade 6 students go in a few days early before they start at the high school. Those are fantastic programs. The only part that bothers me sometimes is that sometimes parents have to pay to join that. And while we were meeting the last 6 weeks after, talking about COVID-19 and supporting students and families and whatnot while they're out of school, and what are we going to do for all of our students to when they come back in, and how are we going to support them? One of our ideas was really exactly what you're talking about. Opening the school up a week early, trying to find the money or some kind of a measure so that the students come in and get climatized to the school, so that they're welcomed by the teachers, so that they're prepared and welcomed by the staff. So that's one of the strategies that we recommended. Whether it will hold or not is to be seen, but it's something that we really talked about, and it was one of the strategies that everybody seemed to like the most. So we'll see what happens.
Right. That's a good to see that they're at least thinking about it for the adult sector, because you're right, it's a huge need. Are there any other questions for Daryl? Comments? Not so much. Daryl, do you have anything?
Well, on that sheet that you received, you have my phone number, you have my email, and if you have any particular needs or questions ever, the busier I am, the happier I am. So please, call me, reach out. I'm dying to visit some of your schools where you work. I want you to show off, because when I talk about some of the things that go on within the Anglophone community and some of the people that we have working within our schools, my colleagues are very jealous, very jealous. The fact that we have Learn, the fact that we have CLCs, and some of the things that you do, the mindset and the philosophies that we have of including the community, of working and sharing with one another, and also how close knit we are, even though we're far apart. I find that's they're really jealous of that. So I took some notes here, like Clea from Stansted. You know, if you want to reach out to me about the unemployment drop on high school dropout, maybe we could talk about some elements or strategies. You know, and whoever, I mean, I didn't get to everybody here today, and I don't have all of the answers, but I would certainly like to help everybody that I possibly can in whatever way possible. And if I don't have the answers, I'll certainly try to find it and do my best to help you.
So you're suggesting that if they have any questions, comments, or whatever, you're always available, and invite to the school. Obviously, the invitation should come from the principal, I'm guessing. So not so much from the CDA, or.
Well, I need to get permission to the principal. Obviously, I like to go through the, you know, typically I go through the chain of command. So I typically get permission from somebody at the board office. So let's say you're a director of service to work with the schools, and then, you know, I'm not going in any school without the principal's authorization, or, you know, or just, you know, even if they're CC'd, as long as they know that it's approved. I'm not a spy. I'm one of these people that's I'm supposed to be an accompagnateur. So I accompany schools and school boards. I'm not the person that decides on your funding. I'm the person that, you know, helps you to achieve what you want to achieve. So I'm the person who accompanies. You're
also a good voice for the network, the CLCs at the ministry. That hasn't always been the case. It's nice to have people who are advocating for us at that level. And I think we have a few of them now. The more you got a new group of people at the ministry and the English Services, DRSEA, and they seem to be very interested in what is going on in the CLCs. Certainly Mireille Abadi is always asking questions and stuff. She loves what's going on in the CLCs. I try to keep her informed as much as possible. So yeah, there's great interest, and it's nice to see for a change. I will admit that. So. Well, I'm
you know, Debbie, I've told you many times that I'm the biggest fan of the CLCs out there, and that's why when they asked, you know, how would you work with your IMD schools, I said I would, the first people I'd reach out to would be the CDAs and the CLCs. So. Okay. So if there are no more questions, thank you, Daryl. Always a pleasure. Please take, as Catherine has put in the chat, please take a couple of minutes to fill in our feedback form. It's really important that we have this feedback. That feedback does help us develop future sessions. I don't know if they will always be virtual, but obviously these days everything is virtual. So thank you, Daryl. Always very interesting. Good to have that cheerleader at the ministry, and that you're available to support our network in whatever way. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. It was nice to see all of you. Thank you for showing up, you know, during this time. It was, you know, you know, I was a little long-winded there, but I'm very passionate about some of those things that I'm working on in that reference guide, and also passionate about the people that I've met over the years and the examples that I can give. And I just hope that it can make a difference in your schools and your community. So thanks again for having me. Have a great day, everyone. If anybody wants the reference guide, I have it in French. I can share it. Just drop me an email, or when it's available in English, it's out for translation right now, I believe, Daryl, you said. Yeah. So once it's available in English, I will make sure I'll send that out to the whole network. So have a wonderful day, everyone, and stay safe. And we will see you next webinar Wednesday. Catherine, remind me, is
May 10th.
Okay.
Volunteering across generations.
That's right. Okay. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you, Daryl. Have a great day. Bye. Talk soon. Bye.